Welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire. Hello and welcome to Lead Live. We're deeply appreciative that you've joined us once again Wednesday, and we're here every Wednesday, noon Pacific Standard Time and 3 p.m. Pacific Eastern Standard Time. So wherever you're at on the planet, you just tune in and leverage us. Today, I have a special guest, Benito Delgado-Olson. This young man has chosen to lead with distinction. Like me, he took advantage of the University of California at Berkeley, one of the top public institutions on the planet, to pursue his studies and earned his baccalaureate degree in political science and government, if I understand correctly. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. And he's decided to lead by example. And he's served and continues to serve on boards at the state level and local level. And at the state level, he's still with the California Public Utilities Commission, chair of their low-income oversight board. And he's been with the California Dedicated to Education Foundation, helping to raise millions and ensure that public education throughout the state of California is of high quality, and no one is without what they need in order to be effective, to learn and to grow and to be responsible individuals able to build and develop remarkable lives for themselves, for their family, and for the community. This gentleman chose to do something that some of us who, whether we find it comfortable or uncomfortable, choose to do also. And I would hope even more of us do across this planet. And that is choose to lead with his entrepreneurial spirit. Back in 2009, if I have the year correct, he created the Supply Bank, we call it Supply Bank Organization. It's based here in Oakland, California, in the United States, and yet it has its impact throughout the state of California. And I wouldn't be surprised if in short order, this particular organization will have an impact beyond just the state of California, and at least throughout the region, if not across the United States and beyond. Now, why do I have this person here? Not only do I want to thank a mutual friend, Tomoko Ha, who I know he wants to give kudos to as well for introducing us, but as an executive director and founder of this organization, he is choosing to make a profound difference in a very quiet way. Not that he's most important, the staff is most important. His advisors, team of advisors, are critical. His leaders who are political policy leaders across the state who are influencing not only at the state level, but the national level, and some of them actually internationally, care about addressing our topic. And what is our topic today? System change, enabling vulnerable communities to improve lives and thrive. And so Benito Delgado-Olson, as I bring him on into the studio, I want to tell you that he reminds me of the book that I read by Dr. David Schwartz, The Magic of Thinking Big. And what does Dr. David Schwartz tell us? Reminds us, and that is, you're what you think. Believe and you can succeed, that you can succeed and you will. I'm a living testament of it. And I know many people who are living this. They're living by example, this understanding that their beliefs drive their ability to be as successful as they want to be. You cure yourself of the fear of failures, do what you fear, and fear disappears. What else do you say? Think and dream creatively, stretch your mind, see what can be, not just what is, make your attitudes into allies, broadcast good news, turn defeat into victory. There's a good side to every situation. A goal is a dream acted upon. Use goals to help you grow and think like a leader, you are lifted to success by those around you. When you understand, even before you're in a so called leadership role, you are really leading your own lives. When you choose to build an organization, oh my goodness, the possibilities are endless, especially when you walk into that space with a leadership mindset. And so today we're going to have this remarkable gentleman, Benito, come into the studio. Hello, remarkable man, and demonstrate why I believe he so beautifully reflects what David Swartz calls really the magic of thinking big. So, with that, I'm going to ask you first to share with us, Bill, why is it that you are, well, no, no, better yet, before I go there, I want to ask you, tell us something about yourself that most people would not know. They won't find it on social media, and it's uniquely you.
That most people don't know. Well, that's interesting. I haven't been asked that question many times before, but good morning. It is great to be here. I would say um, probably a very eclectic and diverse taste in music. And I think I inherit that from both of my parents. I enjoy everything from classical to jazz to alternative rock to the Grateful Dead to Johnny Cash to you name it. And a lot of it is just because I grew up around it. I think uh, liking jazz when I want to relax really came out of a trip to New Orleans. But aside from that, I would attribute the rest of it to my upbringing. That I really do enjoy a lot of music. It's hard for me to find music I don't enjoy, especially if it's from the place of origin, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. Where are you from?
So I was born and raised in Oakland, California. I feel lucky in that I've lived pretty much here at Berkeley my entire life, but have had the privilege of traveling much of the world as well. Eager once it becomes safe again to travel much more because there's nothing better than experiencing another culture firsthand for yourself. There's many aspects to it. I always think of the food first, so I guess that makes me a foodie. But born and raised here, and feel very lucky. It really wasn't until, interestingly enough, that I went to Berkeley that I realized how unique my upbringing was. In that, if I just think of my soccer team, for example, growing up, or just some of the places we would go for Sunday brunch. There's a great place on MacArthur Boulevard called Cafe by the Bay, and it was at the time owned by a Korean woman, a woman from Korea, and an Iranian man who are still together today. They eventually sold the business, but it's still there, and I think they went into real estate or something. But that one place I would go every Sunday after an early, or Saturday after an early soccer game, or Sunday with the family, usually with my dad, you could hear 5 or 6 different languages spoken in that place. And at the end of the day, everybody just, if they were a kid like me, wanted a waffle with whipped cream and strawberries or something healthy like that. But that's a unique experience and something that I think really just makes me feel lucky, if not privileged, because I grew up thinking that everybody had access to all of these wonderful cultures and foods and tastes of places. The first thing I think of when I think of my old elementary school in Oakland is the multicultural fair. Again, because of the food, because every different country or ethnicity or however they categorized it, had all the offerings of that culture. And more than anything, it was a giant fundraiser for the school, and they would sell food, and it was delicious. I mean, I still get excited about it. So, yeah.
It's I agree with you about Oakland. There's something magical about this place. And probably folks can say that about just about any place that they have been reared in, grown up in, or choose to be in. I wasn't reared here, but I've chosen to be here. And it's so interesting. And part of the reason is because of course, the weather is remarkable most of the
Yeah.
year. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. It's like, whoa, wait, what do you mean? It feels like summer most of the years, even when it's raining a little bit. And then the terrain, you can go to a beautiful redwood park, and you feel like you've left the city completely, and you can get down to the lagoon, which is a beautiful more than 3 mile lake, and be right on it,
Yeah.
and you know, in a little, what do you call those little, not boats but whatever, just taking your little nice little trek across it, and then you can be in the middle of a intense city, and you can be in these little suburban areas or in these urban areas or what appears just feels like rural areas. It's just
Yeah.
dramatically diverse, the landscape, but more importantly, the people that literally, because of them, they create these wonderful artistic locations, whether they're restaurants or they're art galleries or whether they're dance studios, etc. The people themselves, the rich culture, there's well in excess of 100 different languages spoken here. And
Yeah.
it's just amazing. It
Yeah.
doesn't, you know, and people are from different continents. I mean, they're from different countries within the continent of Africa, within the continent of Asia, within the continent of Europe, within, you know, all over and throughout the Americas. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And literally right at our fingerprint, I can go get Ethiopian food, just like I can get Korean food,
Yeah.
Chinese food. I can get Jamaican food. I can get you know, Thai, Vietnamese, Thai food. Except you can go on Mexican food, Cuban food. Literally, I can go on and on and on right here in one city. And most importantly, is this understanding that there is not really a gap among people unless we create the gap.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's I don't know if it's still true at the time, but at least maybe 10 years ago, there was a statistic that Oakland had more languages spoken per capita than any other place on earth, or at least the country. I can't remember because it's been a while, but I just, I feel very lucky to be here, basically,
Mhm,
and able
mhm.
to make it because it's a wonderful place if you can accomplish those two things.
Jerry writes 31 flavors like the ice creamery.
Exactly.
And then Olive says, I love Oakland's culture.
Yeah.
And I don't know of anyone who's spent time here who cannot say that. There's something unique that really allows for the spirit to feel like it's open, even if we're wired to being closed, that you just can't be in this space and not magically become open to possibilities. Uh,
Very
and
true.
so I I am very curious. You're in a role where you're the executive director and founder of a major organization responsible for strategic planning, for executing a business plan, a model rather, that is developed by a host of key people who've provided their own insight, their own intelligence. You're responsible for managing the administrative operations with the wonderful, rich, diverse team of staff employees. You do supply change chain management. You are responsible for communicating, doing outreach, advancing public-private partnership, and as a result, you know, bringing in multiple millions, you know, figure millions of dollars, addressing this whole area, developing and ensuring sound brand development, and of course, supporting the board leadership and ensuring their ongoing development, and doing major advocacy at the legislative level, not only locally, but definitely at the state level and beyond. So, what in the heck got you to go there? You know, I understand you studied governance, I understand you studied political science, but what is it that caused you to feel like you had you could have the audacity to create such an organization? Then we're going to talk about the organization in a moment.
Yeah, so I think in terms of what was the motivating factor at the beginning, it was a few things. One was simply I was a senior in college and wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I tried a couple of 9 to 5 uh, jobs after college. Didn't really enjoy them because I love being an entrepreneur, but I'm very grounded in my upbringing. And my upbringing was by two social workers who kind of laid, the model of where I find value, not in terms of dollars and cents, but fulfillment would probably be a better term of how I feel fulfilled. And of course, you want to make sure that your needs are taken care of. But once you get to that point, then it's like, well, how do you want the investment of your time to be utilized, and what does that mean, and what's going to make you feel good when you get up in the morning and when you go to bed at night? And so what does that look like? And for me, that was always some form of service, but I love trying new things and being an entrepreneur. So my senior year of college, the very first conversation I ever had about supplybank.org, which then had a different name, was with a school colleague of mine, Sean Carr, who's still a member of our board of directors and has done some pretty entrepreneurial things himself in the tech community. But the drive for me, I think, was knowing that I would never be satisfied with a job that didn't have an entrepreneurial aspect of trying new things and making them work. And then as you grow, finding quite brilliant people who can make them better. Once the proof of concept is there, you've got to have a lot of humility, and it can be very tough to let go, but it's the right thing to do so that things can grow, become sustainable, build out systems, etc. And so for me, starting the organization, I quickly realized my last year of school that that's just what I wanted to do. I had other ambitions at the time, but I can say that they've kind of all dissipated and gone away. This is the work I love, and this is the work I enjoy. And if I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but if there's one thing, this prolonged pandemic experience has taught me, it's that it's needed now more than ever, and that it can work very well with not a whole lot of resources in the context of the resources it brings to people who need them the most. And so for me, starting the organization, I think, was finding a way to have fulfillment in my career. But also part of that fulfillment, I think, is just, I don't know, I think every kid wants to make their parents proud. So that might have been part of it. But for me, I had my mom and dad, but like a lot of people, I had this other broader community of people that were adults and around me from, as far back as I can remember, maybe like 4 years old. And so it's just, it was the ecosystem of what I grew up around. I think, everybody in that group is pretty much the same. And that's kind of what made it happen.
It's interesting. You said something that makes me, that seems to validate my own perception. And, again, I may be looking for validation and I don't need it. And that is when you follow your passion, because that's what you chose to do. You didn't choose to just find a job. You knew that by your very nature, you're entrepreneurial. And you knew by your very nature and the socialization, the experience you had with your parents as leaders, that you had a wiring towards being of service and being in service. And so you created something. And I fundamentally believe that when we follow our passion, we are actually responding to a need that we may not intellectually be aware of, because we are instruments, we are powerful tools, we're absolutely invaluable resources when we allow ourselves to follow our passion. And so voila, what happens last year? This horrific thing called COVID-19 pandemic. Pandemic because of the lives lost, because of the lives negatively impacted. And even many people who survived, who got through it, there's consequences to even their survival. And yet what you're doing is an act of change that is instrumental. So let's get into the nature of the supplybank.org or organization that people may not be aware of. And I say supplybank.org for those of you who want to go and check out the website. I like that the website really gives you substantive information, and it also has embedded in there some accountability. So you're making more transparent where you're at. And I know that you have a new website, as you just told me, that will be out soon, correct?
Yeah, I would have to, of course, double check with the right person on the team so it doesn't get upset. But I would definitely say we're well on our way. It looks phenomenal, and I think it reflects the type of growth and systems change our organization is aiming towards. So hopefully the end of next month, but definitely this fall.
So you just said something. You said growth and systems change. So supply bank is about systems change, operating like a food bank, but for supplies. So I'm going to read this, which is really the essence of what you're about, and I want you to give us more details. So by innovatively applying the food bank model to address unmet material needs, causing barriers to health, education, and employment, supply bank simultaneously treat symptoms and forge pathways out of poverty. Folks, that is the essence. You want to speak to that? Because, and just so that people know that to date, the organization has distributed, I don't know if it's 30 million or an extra 30 million now, but a worth of basic necessities, including diapers, hygiene supplies, school supplies, refurbished laptops, and other items to more than 500,000 people throughout the state. Take it away.
Yeah, and thank you. I think the best place to start would just be to ground in the most straightforward terms I can what it is we're doing, and then talk about our response to COVID. So the local, state, and federal governments already invest what amounts to in California billions of dollars into our safety net, right? So everything from your local family resource center or WIC agency site to you know, different programs within our school systems, like the United States McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, which identifies and tracks every student experiencing homelessness in public schools, to you name it. I could list 20 government acronyms of programs, but those systems already exist. What doesn't exist is all of those highly qualified social workers, most of whom have an MSW or greater, having access to what their clients actually need in terms of tangible resources to remove a lot of stressors from their day, to improve their health, to make sure they can send their kids to childcare so they can go to work, and so they can, retain studies easier by having access to school supplies and things like that. And so what supplybank.org is doing is equipping all of these trusted local community-based organizations that have likely already existed for 10 plus, in some many cases, decades, and just simply making sure that the people they have in their employ can provide the tangible resources that their clients and the families and communities they serve need. And so prior to the pandemic, that meant, well, if there's a new parenting class or a home visitation program in a rural community, or et cetera, family resource center, let's just start making diapers and wipes, since that's about $100 a month, which is all really expensive if you qualify for something like a food assistance or cash assistance or medical assistance or Medi-Cal. And let's just make it part of the program. Let's get rid of the stigma of the handout and the welfare line and all of that stuff, which nobody would enjoy. And let's just say, oh, you're in a new parenting class, or oh, you're in a home visitation program. That's wonderful. It now includes diapers and wipes. And we know, and they know, that would save them about $100 a month. But we don't have to make a big deal out of it. Let's just make that part of the program so that family gets more resources and their lives become a little bit better. And if they need to take that kid to childcare where diapers are often required, they can just bring those and they can go to work. And that gets rid of a barrier to childcare and employment, just in that one example. Or if it's a homeless child in a public school, they're identified through a school counselor or other social worker. They meet with the parents. They have to fill out this form called a supplemental residency questionnaire. It has a bunch of boxes about what your unmet needs are. Some of those are supply needs. It used to be you'd get a referral of places you could go to get those items. We say, well, why don't we just make sure the district has them, since they're already identifying the family? It's a critical point of first contact where trust needs to be developed so that they can work with them to get them into other programs that provide pathways out of poverty. let's just make sure they have a couple $100 worth of school supplies for the few kids that family has, so they can just give it to them. So immediately they've received something that will help them make their kids happy and excited, and make the parents feel like they're being valued and taken care of from the point of first contact. So there's many other examples, but at the end of the day, that's what supplybank.org is about. On the more business side, California is huge. The economies of scale and the implications of what you can do with that economies of scale, if you take the very long time it takes to coordinate all of that, are tremendous for job creation, for sustainable sourcing, for making sure that what is provided is as good or better than what you or I would buy for our own families in the store. All of that is possible, and we know it's possible because we've done it. We've had so many demonstration projects prior to COVID that we know it's true. And what happened at the beginning of the pandemic really just put our program into overdrive, and hasn't really slowed down since. Every time we thought it would, there's been a surge or now a variant that's made the work continue with a different kind of urgency. The fires, of course, are complicating things a little bit further. But just as a, perhaps a stopping point, I would say that that's really the idea behind the model. There's already an investment of infrastructure, of trusted local organizations that have the relationships with the families in the community and work with them regularly. And those families know where to go, they know who to talk to. It's already done. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel just to equip families with what they need. We just need to equip the people who already work with those families with what they need, so that it makes their organizations even more trusted and more well-known in the community. So that's what supplybank.org is really about. I would share one example because I know you mentioned diapers. So this here is an example of a branded, cutest thing ever, a diaper on a show, but a branded Talk Read Sing diaper that we worked on with our State First 5 Commission and their wonderful local county partners. As anyone who has kids know, that diapers have been a lot in the news about prices going up. They're anywhere from, I think these days, if you're lucky, a quarter to 50 cents in the store, depending on the size you're going for. And the brand, assuming it's of one of the name brands, those, prior to those price increases, I think cost us somewhere around a dime or a couple of pennies more. And now it's just probably about 12 to 15 cents at the most. So the cost savings that are available to us because we have these economies of scale are not available to the families that our partners serve. So there's this added benefit of really expanding the impact of these. And the other piece is that by going to organizations that already exist and that are in the community, it makes the administrative burden on us much, much smaller. We really just have to figure out with, the institutional knowledge holders of each county or community, what are the organizations that can do this or have the capacity to do this well? Or what are their few barriers and how can we help them get through them? And so that's really how the whole model works.
Yeah, so much embedded in what you just described. The power of partnerships, the power of leveraging existing resources, the importance of scaling in a way that reduces cost for those who are providing the services and those who need to receive the services. So critical. So this systems thinking, I want people to see very briefly. When they go to your website, they'll get a sense that you're all about giving people, supplying people with the tools they need, with the equipment they need in order to be able to get to a place where they're not worried about not being able to purchase or not being able to access or not being able to scale. You're helping with that. And you're really about this, what do we call it? The success oriented today and tomorrow. And then, of course, you talked about the diaper kit. You want to speak to the K through to college resources that you've been providing, especially to homeless and low income individuals?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So that's actually the first program we ever had. The way we started was really looking at the concept that we described around school children that have been identified as homeless or foster or otherwise predominantly low income serving schools, or schools that, Title I is how they're commonly characterized. But that's one of our oldest programs. It began with our first ever pilot distribution at the South Berkeley YMCA in Berkeley, California. Their executive director at the time was this remarkable person. Still stay in touch with, Shirley Richardson Brower, and she ran one of the best after-school programs I've really still have ever seen in my life, I would say. And with just such drive and passion for the South and West Berkeley communities. I was happy, of course, but sad when she announced she was retiring, because she just did a wonderful job. But it was really through talking to her and other community members initially in Berkeley, Oakland, in West Contra Costa County, which is mainly Richmond, but also other cities, San Pablo, Hercules, Pinole, El Cerrito, about this, and just saying, the basic problem is the same in all of these communities around access, cost, and so forth. And so that was really what began the program, was just acknowledging that this issue exists across multiple communities across the region, and as we would find out later, Bay Area and state. And so we focused this program on providing grade appropriate school supply kits that have anywhere from about $50 to $65 in store value of what it would cost worth of supplies. Those calculations are pre-pandemic, and I know costs have gone up a bit, so it might be a little more now. But also things like dental hygiene kits. We're starting to look at things like, of course, including PPE since the start of the pandemic, and other items. But one other cool thing I'll show is, anyone who's familiar with Oakland will know there's an organization called Oaklandish, and so they did these little backpacks for us, where we had them design it with some of their logo and swag. That was a project we did a few years ago, right before the pandemic, that hopefully we'll be able to start up again. But it's another example of how we try to make sure everything we distribute is just as good, but hopefully better than what you would find in the store. And I can say one event that program brings that we were able to restart for the first time since the beginning of the pandemic are school kickoff events. While we distribute to all 58 counties across the state, and particularly for kids identified as experiencing homelessness, one of our favorite things are these kickoff events that we do inside of schools, usually right around the start of the school year or right after the holiday recess in January, and provide all the school supply kits, usually a couple of extras, and just it's tremendous fun. But it also grounds you. When we were at Reach Academy in East Oakland a couple of weeks ago, and it just grounds you when you see how happy some of those kids and their parents get over receiving some of it. And the feedback we got from the school resource officer about the parents' reaction after school was really just a very heartfelt reminder, because we've all been doing so much remote work during COVID, about what it brings parents to tears. I mean, what else can you say? Because it's helping their child. And the meaning of our work has really increased quite a bit, I think, during the pandemic. But even prior to it, events like that were always some of the things that we enjoyed the most.
Powerful. And then you've historically had the closing the digital divide that I referenced briefly earlier. You want to speak to this, because you're doing something now that I think is what leaders do.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, this was something that we piloted because we saw that community college students, particularly those on CalWorks, had a serious need for access to computers. But even prior to the pandemic, we realized there was another organization also based in Oakland called Tech Exchange, which had been doing this for the K-12 population. And, they basically said they wanted to go into the community college space. And because we and have now expanded into these other areas, but at the time wanted to expand into other areas of, basic material needs assistance for other populations and other items. Right now we're collaborating on when we open a new warehouse in a few years, if that's something we can work together on them. But the bottom line is we sort of just stepped aside and, wished them well. And it was really the right decision. I mean, nobody predicted the pandemic, but that organization, Tech Exchange, has done tremendous work since the start of the pandemic and was just like us, but in a different way, a unique community asset to equip thousands and thousands and thousands of kids with computers and access when it was most needed, because everybody was going online very quickly and they had some infrastructure there. And so part of systems change is acknowledging when there's an organization or way to do it that's better than what you're proposing. And for them, as soon as we kind of realized that Seth, that's their executive director, wanted to move into this population, we thought about long-term strategies of coupling distributions together, which has happened organically in some places just by the partnership organizations because they're the same. But yeah, so it was a fun pilot to do. I mean, we had a great time, but very happy that Tech Exchange is doing a good job too.
That is awesome. And I just want to remind those who are viewing that whether they've done it themselves or they've witnessed other people, hopefully they will do it themselves if they haven't done it. There are so many resources among us across the globe. And the idea that I may have, you may actually be operating in that space. And the degree to which I make it public and I do my due diligence, I may be able to provide you with access to resources that I was going to use to build that same thing, but I don't need to do it because you're doing it and you're doing it well. And that's what you're speaking to, Benito. You could have all just ramped that up and because of your contacts, et cetera, let it explode. And yet you did the leadership thing, which is see an organization already doing very viable things, very practical, taking care of business and doing it well. And you did a beautiful leadership handoff. I love that. And so this you're still doing, correct? You're providing supplies to nonprofits.
Yes, however, that's probably an excellent segue to talk
Mhm.
about our COVID response, because that's really, and it's public agencies too. But we had a program prior to the pandemic that provided large in kind, unopened, and new, as well as things we procured like all the other programs to nonprofit organizations around the state. And the infrastructure that happened through that program, including some pretty unique partnerships with nonprofit organizations in the Central Valley that had their own warehousing and truck driving schools and things like that, really laid some of the framework for some of the more innovative partnerships that we had during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what I will say about the program, because we plan to continue it, especially when our new distribution center opens, is that there are a number of wholesale networks as well as other similar logistical channels that take in all of the unopened return items from stores like Costco and World Market and so forth, and then also partially damaged. And what I mean by that is if you can think of a pallet much like the one in the picture here, assume a forklift hit the side of a box and ripped it through the plastic. It's actually, I don't know if it's protocol or just cheaper, but for whatever reason, they'll put that whole pallet into a section of damaged goods. I'm guessing because of the time intensity it would take to unopen everything and confirm there's no damage, that it's cheaper to do that and write it off and donate it. But what I can say is we've received everything in the past, maybe think 3 or 4 years prior to the pandemic, of 100 pallets of mostly unopened packages of baby products, not just diapers and wipes, but all different types of things you can possibly think of, to household furniture, to I think one time we received a 3-pallet wide freezer that our director of programs, Justin Van Zerber, got to a facility up in the Sierras that really needed it. There's a food bank up there. So there's always a home for these types of things. And one of the things we're really looking forward to when our distribution center is open is to start taking these in. And the volume that we're looking at is about 3 54-foot containers a day.
Wow.
So it could be a tremendous benefit, particularly for the NorCal community, but our partners are all over the state.
Got it. And then you are able to leverage, in addition to your wonderful team of full-time employees and part-time employees, you're able to leverage volunteers to help you with a lot of this work. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm smiling because this is a great historical photo because it's from quite a while ago, but they look the same, so it's not that different. But this is one of our first volunteer events that had about, I want to say maybe 500 people show up over a couple of shifts. So that's probably
Beautiful.
about 150, 200 right there. But one of the best ways to engage the public in your work is to make them part of it. And for us, volunteer events, these large assembly lines of hygiene kits was the first line, closest to us if you see yourself as in the picture. And then all the different school supply kit assembly lines behind it. It's just a tremendous amount of energy and fun. So that's something we're actually, we're going to follow all the public health orders and see what's safe, but we're looking at the potential of bringing an event of this scale back this fall, either in San Diego or Sacramento. If it's later into the winter months, my vote would be down south, but we'll see what the team thinks is best.
Got it.
But so, we're really excited for it. Volunteerism is key. Again, in the new distribution center, that'll be a key part of it as well. There'll be a volunteer center there.
I thought I had turned off all my phones, so my apology. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
We're in our home studios and offices, and so things are still moving. And then this nicely reflects just the density of activity across the state at one point in time as it relates to just ensuring that supplies get to well in excess of 450 partnering agencies, right?
That's correct. And this number is actually, it'll be part of the new impact page on our new website, but it's gone up to more than 500. But this is a wonderful visual to kind of help visualize how our process works. These are all the different, school districts and county offices of education we work with across the state. All of these are still partners, and we've added many more, inclusive of some of the ones that are there. The first 5 county commissions and their family resource centers and their WIC offices, and it's just really a large critical mass of the safety net in every county. So this is probably a good place to explain how our COVID experience started. So, much like everyone else in February of 2020, we had a plan for what we were going to do with our year. I want to say towards the end of that month, at that point, I think there was a cruise ship at the Port of Oakland that had a few positive cases, and also a couple of potential outbreaks. I think there was something going on up in Seattle and Kent, Washington, as well as maybe 1 or 2 in Santa Clara County. We now know, through the reports that have come out since then, that there were way more cases than that all over the place. But our first phone call, or at least mine, was in February. And I remember, I want to say it was either the last weekend of February or March, we had an email introduction from somebody from our State Department of Social Services to the Health and Human Services Agency's Secretary's Office and the State Children and Families, also known as First 5 Commission. And by that time, we were already working, with some county commissions on this, but that was really the first, serious one where there were leaders of the state who were plugged into the Governor's Office of Emergency Services and others saying, this is going to be serious and this is going to be happening for a while. We need to start preparing. And that led to the first of what I've lost track now have been a series of needs assessments across all 58 counties. Some counties where we're working with them directly have more specific and in-depth processes because we're, an arm of the response too. But, supplybank.org very quickly started utilizing the relationships we had built out during planning for disaster response in the context of fires, as well as existing relationships for things like the diaper kit program, our different K to college programs, and others to really, get to work quickly. And it didn't stop for months and months. I think in August of 2020, maybe September, we had a small break, and then it just went right back up and people started getting back together again. But what we've been doing since the pandemic started are statewide needs assessments for each county, working with the local First Five Commission, their child care, resource and referral networks, and other partners. Initially this program began because childcare providers needed access to PPE, disinfectants, and other items and didn't have them. And if childcare providers didn't have those items, they couldn't operate effectively or safely. And that meant the kids of your first responders, your hospital workers, your farm workers, everyone whose job was deemed essential to keep, the economy and really just life going, wouldn't be able to go to work. So our work context and the context of our conversations quickly switched from, we like your idea, we like systems change, this is going to take time to do, let's pilot this and pilot that, or let's continue the discussion, to how can we do this right now?
Exactly.
How can we do this right now so childcare isn't shut down in XYZ places? We've heard so many thousand have closed their doors and are not reopening. So there was not panic. I mean, I credit everybody. It wasn't panic, but there was urgency and stress everywhere. And phone calls that normally would be scheduled out 2 weeks in advance would just happen at 9 o'clock. And in our home county, there was someone who I greatly admire that now works for the Biden administration. And I had a series of midnight phone calls planning out PPE and diaper and wipe and other types of distributions in our home county, because that's just when we were both available. I mean, it was exhausting, but also meaningful at a time where having a way to contribute, I think, was, just nice to have, truthfully, because I think it stopped the isolation that a lot of other folks had to deal with. But I've really got to hand it to, all the staff at these partnership organizations, these family resource centers, child care provider, resource and referral networks, WIC offices, etc. I mean, our job was pretty hard, but they were actually going into the office and in person and dealing with things at a time where nobody had any answers. I mean, in the first few months, if you remember, nobody really knew, is this thing just airborne? If we touch our groceries and somebody had it and they touched our groceries, are we going to get it? And it was a weird and stressful time. But for Supply Bank, I think the bottom line is this, is that at a time when it was most needed and most important to just get the job done well, the model that we created through all of these other programs and pilots and demonstration projects over a decade was without question where folks went who just wanted this done quickly, so that the people and aspects of the safety net that they were working with could have what they needed as quickly as possible and with folks that they trusted. And that's why they went to us. And I think that, I think is the best piece of evidence we have around the merits of the type of model that our team is putting together and trying to create as the default system for how we give people more resources.
I want to speak to something else that is a testament to. When we have a will to do something, we can do it like that.
Yep.
We don't have to take 2 weeks to schedule a meeting. We don't have to take a month to schedule a meeting. We don't have to say we have to do it next year or 5 years from now. When we have the will, we can do it like that. And that showed up all over the place, all over the planet with regards to COVID-19 pandemic. And the question is, how do we ensure that will, that predisposition to understand the urgency of now, to neutralize the negative impact on communities, so that we eliminate vulnerable communities. We actually have all communities be communities that are thriving, that are choosing to leverage the resources that they themselves create because they've got the systems in place to support them. So that's a big question. And I wonder, and it's really more of a rhetorical question, but I want you to entertain that question. But I also want to say something very quickly. When you use the word WIC, you're talking about the Women, Infants, and Children program that's available across the country, right? So that within the United States, because most people don't know what WIC is. That's Women, Infant, and Children programs funded through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So this whole notion of wheel, and I think people have a sense of what system change means. Maybe you want to clarify that just very simply. We have a limited amount of time, but then I want you to go into the will to sustain this emphasis on meeting the needs, minimizing cost, ensuring greater access, and building up communities so that we don't have to be concerned 10 years out, 20 years out, that we understand the urgency of now to address and remedy.
Absolutely. So I would say systems change for us, and I would say too, I can go beyond supply bank and say in my capacity as chair of the Low Income Oversight Board at the Public Utilities Commission, speaking for myself, and with supply bank, systems change for us is taking the same type of considerations that businesses that want to be successful to make their customer feel valued, to just do it for the human being that you're providing services to through the safety net. And a basic way to do that is to coordinate everything so that they don't have to go to more than a couple of places to get the assistance they need, to have more resources, to have the opportunity to learn more, to basically to find the pathway out of the situation they're in into a place that's better for them and their family. And so supplybank.org's role in that is working with the safety net that exists within a county and figuring out who are the trusted actors that we can entrust with what amounts to, and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of brand new items, and provide them to the people they serve in the community so that those people have them, but also so that it reinforces that trusted local organization or organizations so that they are utilized for all the other services that truthfully matter even more because they provide direct pathways out of poverty. And what that safety net looks like can vary dramatically across California. So for example, one key partner I haven't talked at all about are community service action agencies, which have been around since the Great Society of the Johnson administration. And those agencies are the safety net in so many of our smaller and rural counties across California. They have everything integrated into them beyond the block grant that makes them a community service action agency. They have Head Start, some of them have WIC, some have food banks. I mean, the list goes on and on. And an example of what is possible with this model once you do it is there's an organization called the Central Valley Opportunity Center, which is a community service action agency, but also has warehousing and a truck driving school where they literally do outreach to workers in the fields and say, if you're interested, there's a job training program that can get you a license to drive trucks, which is a critically needed field. And so what we did is part of our COVID response and just following the principle of creating pathways out of poverty is hire the truck driving school to do all of our deliveries. So rather than these students driving empty trucks up and down the Central Valley in the Sierra Nevada, let's pay them. Let's get that truck driving school more resources that we were going to spend anyway. And let's also accomplish the main goals of Supply Bank. And, from what I understand from Jessica Welty, who runs our operations side of things, it went quite well. And so that's something that we're hoping to replicate and expand and make our default option across the state. But I think those are the two aspects of systems change. We already know this procurement largely happens. We just need to make it coordinated, competitive, have a very small fixed cost for us to coordinate it that's separate, so that the cost of the actual materials is very transparent. So I know we have limited time, but one key example I want to make sure I shared was,
Please.
at the beginning of the pandemic, during scarcity and price gouging, I think we all remembered that infrared thermometers were in high demand by employers that were
Correct.
essential, service providers, everyone. And so this is one that we created with our State First 5 agency that, came in a nice, little case. And I think these were going online for anywhere from $50 to $60.
Correct.
We
And more.
procured, I think, upwards of 12,000 of these for child care providers, family resource centers, etc. And our baseline cost was about $9, with shipping, QC, testing, all of that type of stuff. It might be closer to about 11. But that is a tremendous cost savings and resource at a time where the resource is scarce, that was disseminated to all 58 counties across the state and is being utilized by hundreds of thousands of people. And it's because of the system that was in place to do it. That's a really small example, but over time, with enough dedication, as one person just put, where there is a will, there is a way. And this can work, and it can create jobs. It can expand the amount of resources available to people who need them dramatically, and in a way that respects their dignity as human beings and empowers the local trusted organizations that we've already created through decades of investment. So that's what systems changes for Supply Bank.
Emphasis on dignity as human beings. I want to acknowledge someone else who wrote something. I have so many thoughts I want to share, but I want to acknowledge Tomoko, who literally introduced me to you to me. She writes, Benito, thank you for all you do with your leadership and the work you have been doing that hasn't ever been done before to support communities. You opened up dialogue with different sectors. Thank you for bringing so many parties together to support schools. And those parties, folks, include elected officials at the national and local, and as well as statewide level. It includes school board leaders. It includes technicians. It includes policy leaders. It includes business owners, business leaders. It's just educators. It's a beautiful long list of who's who, and people who care, and people who when they put their signature down, people respond accordingly. So when we say that Benito is being strategic and is definitely modeling leadership, he's doing it with excellence. And then she goes on to write, you're also bringing together families and community. You're an inspiration, and it's been amazing watching your organization grow over the years, making profound impact. I remember when Tomoko initially told me about, she said, I met him on a plane and I was completely overwhelmed by his presence. And I said, well, what was it? His dream, his vision. And leaders first have a vision. If you don't have a vision, you're not likely to have a concrete goal, and you're not likely to know where you're going. When you have a vision, you're likely to actualize it. You not only had a passion, you operationalized it in a vision, and then you were able to sell it to teams of people that you hired and folks you brought on as advisory. Wow, that's powerful. And I want people to see, just among your leadership team over the years, includes Congresswoman Barbara Lee, includes our local senators, include educators, council persons, superintendents, includes county officials, and includes a Kaiser executive, Kaiser Permanente executive, and other executives, school board leaders. These are just a few. And folks, if you want to see more of who's among the who's who, just historically, there's even more that he's going to upload on the new website within the next few months. You can go to https /supplybank.org/team/. You want to share anything about your team, because when I just investigated and studied, and some of these people I know personally and I value highly, I just was taken away. How did you get these folks in? Was it their vision also, and it was easy to hook them in, or how did you go about doing that?
Certainly. Well, I should start by saying the lion's share of the work is done by the day-to-day team, which is my staff,
That's
and
right.
they do very good work. And I would say they're equally driven and passionate. And so I don't want to overshadow them. But with respect to our civic leadership and some of our philanthropic leaders in California, I think everybody recognizes this is needed. I in just looking, this photo was taken at the last public event we did because it was in February of
Yeah.
2020, which was our 10th anniversary. And so a lot of these individuals here are folks who were speakers. So you see our former Congressman George Miller with our local Congresswoman Barbara Lee and several members of our board, partnering food bank down in San Diego. Our supervisor Wilma Chan and our state controller Betty Yee and our state senator Nancy Skinner and Supervisor Joya from West Contra Costa. All of them have been engaged one way or the other and have tried to help where they can since the beginning. And I think with us, everyone recognizes this is a good idea and needed. Getting through decades of institution building of how things are done now and changing it is what's difficult. And it really just has to be done one task at a time. Some are very straightforward and easy. Others require tremendous tenacity and audacity to get through. I'm getting a real crash course in land use development with the development of our new distribution center and nonprofit center, and can say that none of these things are very easy, but they're all worthwhile. And so if they take, a year or if they take 5, if it gets done for the next generation, well, then that's time well spent. So that's kind of the mentality you have to keep, and just knowing that change is not easy. Anyone who's ever done anything, I think, has said that at one point. but you get these things where you have time to reflect and just realize what you did mattered. And so, I was the only person on my team who was able to travel around the state during COVID and do different types of publicity events to just let know the community that materials are being moved and that resources are coming, and to highlight all the work of our partnership organizations. And we recently did one in Yolo County with their county superintendent, their local First Five Commission, and their Yolo County Children's Alliance, resource and referral agencies, and the local legislative offices were represented and so forth. But to me, what was the most meaningful was just talking to the executive director of the Child Care Resource and Referral Agency, and talking to the chief deputy director of First Five California, because she lives in Yolo County and is also on the school board and just very engaged in the community, Jackie. And so it when you have events like that, you hear firsthand from the people who are working with families and providing the assistance, and you realize that, oh man, there is a lot of mud to get things to change, even if everybody understands that it's the right thing to do, but just how to get there is very difficult. But having those kind of events and moments, that's what makes it worthwhile.
Yeah. Well, there's so much more. In fact, there was a question that uh, you knew we were going to ask today, but we've run out of time, and I want to honor your time and those who are viewing's time. And if you're okay, I'd love to welcome you back to talk about what systems require a change to ensure that we experience healthy, resilient, and well protected communities. That's a big question. And it might be that I have a panel of you and others who get into the thick of things with regards to system change, and there's no one answer, folks, we know that, but we would like to really explore that so that it encourages, inspires critical reflection that leads to the kind of action that transforms the nature of what we're doing throughout our societies across the planet. And we know here at Lead Live, it is at the 4 5s are critical to this overall freedom of everything, of expression, of experiencing health and well-being, of love, etc. And that those 4 5s are faith, whatever faiths people have, and they're diverse across this beautiful globe, family, finance, fitness, and fun, or we call it joy, or we call it happiness. We believe that those are 5 preconditions to real freedom, that everyone has a right, they're born into this life with the right to experience that. It's up to all of us to create the conditions that facilitate that.
Absolutely. That would be a very worthwhile panel, and I would love to participate, and I would love to help be a thought partner, because I think there's a lot of excellent statewide civic leaders and other nonprofit leaders who could really inform that discussion well.
Absolutely. Consider it that that's going to happen. We're going to make it happen.
Right. Sounds good.
Well, Benito, it's been an absolute joy, my honor, my privilege to be able to welcome you here, and more importantly, to ensure that we could hear the essence of you. We didn't get everything, but we got quite a bit that led you to create something that's serving countless people, and create something that allows for teams of people to work with you as staff leaders, as advisory leaders, as board leaders, as partners, thought and other kinds of partners throughout the community across the state. And I'm expecting something extraordinarily big, even if it's literally taking the magic of what you and your team has done and putting it in some kind of something that people can use to model, to leverage, to adapt, and ensure that we get to the bottom line: more healthy, resilient, and well-protected communities. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Any
you very
last
much for
words?
having me. I would just add that first, thank you, and then most of all, change is worth it. So, to any one of your viewers or former or future guests, there's always that down moment where you're like, is this really worth the time? The answer is yes. So, keep at it.
Excellent. It's an honor. Thank you so much. I look forward to reconnecting with you very soon. I'm going to put you in the back of the studio as I close out this Lead Live, and thank you all for joining us. And we hope that you were at least inspired, and definitely we want you to walk away with some tools. And there are a lot of little nuggets, a lot of gems that were shared by Benito, and we hope that you are able to use them now, not just in the future, but now. And if you're not able to use them, share them. Share this video. That'll be live on available on LinkedIn, on YouTube, Facebook, as well as Amazon and Roku TV. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again here at Lead Live. Wado.